Critters! I'm Claire Jones, your devoted host of the Sacred Reading CR podcast, where we discuss and examine Critical Role episodes, plot lines, characters, players, and everything in between through the lens of sacred reading practices. This particular episode is about Campaign 1, Episode 25, Part 2, and joining me today is Atlas.
Hey!
All right, so the icebreaker for today is a weird one, but I thought it was a good one. Have you experienced a natural disaster, like a hurricane or a tornado, or fill in the blank?
Multiple wildfires, if those count.
I think that counts, yeah.
Yeah. I grew up in wildfire country. It was most of my summers growing up. There was either an evacuation order or all the smoke from them.
Yeah. I think evacuation orders definitely count as natural disaster.
Yeah. So we were never super duper close. Like our house was never in danger, but we were always on the next to be evacuated list routinely.
Mm-hmm.
We had the bags packed in the foyer ready to go.
Mm-hmm.
So yes-ish.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was normal for me, so I never think of them as natural disasters, but
yeah, right, when you grow up with it, it's just like part of the deal.
Yeah, didn't think it was weird until I went back for Christmas, and one happened over Christmas break, and it's just like, this is not the season for this. But no snow until after New Year's. Makes everything very dry and prone to fire.
Yeah. Fires are getting worse too. I mean, I'm in the Pacific Northwest, and September has pretty much become fire month for us, honestly.
Yeah, this summer's been weird because we actually got enough water that we didn't really have any. It was very strange. We had one pop up in September, but it was like 2 days and over, and it was very weird. Last summer, work got evacuated, so
yeah,
it's
funny you say that, because I asked the question, I didn't even think about all of my tornado experience, because I also grew up in tornado country, and so it didn't even cross my mind to think about it, because I've never seen a tornado, and I've never been directly impacted by one, but the consequent winds, I grew up in an area of the Midwest that was very hilly, but all of the area around us was very flat. And so the tornadoes never really touched the hilly area. It just circled around us. And so we always got the wind, but we didn't get the actual funnels,
Yeah.
So we never had to there was a couple times where we had to go into the basement, and that became pretty regular. Take the, little radio down with you and make sure you have blankets and the cats are in and stuff like that. There was one really bad one where a tree fell on our garage, and we had just finished a yard sale, and so our garage was full of furniture and stuff. It shouldn't have been, and so everything got destroyed in the garage, and it was pretty chaotic, but I did actually experience a very minor earthquake too when I was living in a different city. It was a very minor one, but it happened very early Saturday morning, and so I was still asleep, and it just felt like someone had taken my bed and was shaking it with their hands, and it woke me up, because it felt like someone was trying to wake me up, but it was over within a few seconds, and I was like, did I imagine that? And then everyone else was like, yeah, earthquake, and I was like, oh, okay, cool. So I'm not crazy.
Yeah, the more I'm thinking about it, the more I'm remembering that I've actually lived through.
Yeah,
I went to grad school in the Midwest and had a few tornadoes. I got stuck in a tropical storm in Florida one time.
Yeah, same. There was a tropical storm in Florida that I got caught in one time. Yeah.
Little earthquake, did that. Been there, done that. And a couple blizzards.
Yeah. Losing power and blizzards. Yeah.
And a polar vortex where it was -40 for 3 days straight.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's a natural disaster technically, until you start losing power and stuff like that. I don't know. Where's the definition line for that?
I don't know. I count it because they like put out all of these, shelter in place warnings.
Mm,
So,
sure. Yeah, I mean,
I think I got more warnings for that than I got for the tornadoes. So,
yeah.
put it on the list.
I mean, with climate change, this is just going to become more and more part of our reality, right?
Yep.
So there's probably not going to be anyone left soon who's not impacted by natural disasters in some shape or form.
Accurate and depressing.
Mm-hmm. Well, on that happy note, let's move on into the episode, and please join us as we embark on this exciting adventure in story analysis and self-reflection in order to deepen our understanding of ourselves and the world around us. As always, we love hearing your own insights and stories as well, so please comment, like, and subscribe. And ready? All right, let's dive in. Vox Machina have just had dinner at the palace in Amman with Sovereign Uriel, the Council of Tal'Dorei, and Lord and Lady Briarwood, the two individuals responsible for the death of Percy's entire family 4 or 5 years ago. Vax had snuck up into the Briarwood's room after the dinner was over and ended up getting his ass handed to him, pretty much. The rest of the group came to his rescue and ended up driving the Briarwoods to flee from the palace, with Percy threatening their remaining carriage driver, and that's where the second half of this episode begins. The guards start rushing toward them in the courtyard where they stand with the ruined carriage, and Tiberius, still feeling feeble-minded from the fight, uses his lizard brain to find Alora. The carriage driver continues to beg for his life, and Percy tells him that he wants him to spend the rest of his life trying to make up for the things that the driver allowed to happen, presumably in Whitestone. Percy then uses the butt of his gun to knock the young man unconscious. Percy says that they should put him in a cell, and the rest of the group says that they can put him in the cell that is in the basement of Greyskull Keep. Keyleth also solders up the young man's wounds where Percy shot the fingers off of his hand. 2 of the palace guards start questioning the white tiefling that had joined them in the battle, the guest character that Kit Buss is playing. They tell her that she does not have the approval to be at the palace, and she says that she has been working there for months. They attempt to arrest her, and Vax stops them, saying that they saved Uriel and that they must stand down. The guard says that all they know is that the group have attacked 2 guests at the palace, and they are going to investigate it further. Vax asks him again, "You do realize that your lord would not be alive if it weren't for us?" And Keyleth says that they are common guards, and she says this because Tiberius would if he were there, and they should not interfere with the business they have arranged with people who have higher authority than them. She rolls a 15 on her intimidation check, and the guard says that he doesn't mean any offense. Vex cuts in saying, "What's up? What's good?" And the guard lets go of the tiefling as a result, saying that they're going to investigate, and he means no disrespect, but it's a very peculiar circumstance. He says that they will reach out to Vox Machina when they need to hear their point of view, and Keyleth says, no, we'll call you. At this point, Tiberius finds Alora at the top of the stairs and tries to emote to Lockheed to tell Alora that he needs help. Alora takes his head as he flails around and starts to inspect him, discovering that he has been feeble-minded. She says that she does not have the abilities to fix this, and they need to find a good cleric. The guards back away from the rest of the group, and Vex says to the group, and vampires, and Scanlan says, and a tiefling, as Percy inspects the carriage for more clues. Vex searches Vax, having seen how close to death he had been, and finds the fang holes from Silas Briarwood on his neck. Vax says that he doesn't feel good and needs to go to a temple. He says he thinks he's dangerous, and Keyleth does a medicine check on him, finding the same puncture wounds that Vex did. Vax tells them that they need to put him in the dungeon at Greyskull Keep soon, and Scanlan says that he's read that everything will be fine if they bury him for 5 days and 5 nights. Percy doesn't find anything in the carriage, and Vex questions the tiefling, who gives her name as Lilith, saying that Vox Machina has interesting taste in enemies, almost as interesting as hers. Keyleth says she has a pretty name, and Lilith, I don't know why I almost said Lilith. Maybe I was thinking Lilo, I don't know. Lilith tells her that Keyleth, oh, I was just combining the two names together. That's what I was doing there. Lilith tells her that Keyleth is pretty as well. Vex asks her if she knows anything about vampires, and she says not as much as she would like. She also says that Vax, though, does not look as healthy as she imagines he may usually. Scanlan asks if she's a healer, and she says she's not. Grog then asks her what she does deal in, and Scanlan asks her why she infiltrated the palace in the first place. Lilith says that she thinks they are currently having more pressing matters than her concerns, and Vex asks if she will come with them then. Keyleth asks Lilith where she's from, since she has such an interesting accent, and Vex interrupts, saying that they really need to get Vax to a cleric. At this point, a strange glowing red eye sigil lights up on Lilith's chest and then fades as she goes, "Oh no," and Scanlan makes sure to say that he is just looking at the symbol on her chest, nothing else, and Vex asks her what that was. Lilith stutters, unable to form a response, and Keyleth asks her if she's all right, then asks if she's with the Briarwoods. Lilith says no, but she must leave immediately. She drops an illusion over herself again to become the maidservant she was previously, and Vex asks her if she can come with them to a temple. Lilith says that she can, but not for long. She cannot linger. And Scanlan asks what the mark on her chest is. She tells them that it is the mark of the broker, and he has been seeking her. She has been hiding at the palace from him, but the mark means that she is no longer hidden and must leave. Scanlan says that she helped them in battle, so does she want them to help hide her? Lilith says that she does not want to drag Vox Machina into her troubles, but she knows who they are. Scanlan offers a business card, and she tells them that they traveled with her cousin, Zara. They all exclaim with excitement, and Lilith tells them that her and Zara are very close, a dear friend of hers. Zara had told her about them, and Lilith knows that they have their own troubles, and she does not want to drag them into hers. Keyleth says that they need to make a pit stop at the temple to Sarenrae anyway, so why doesn't Lilith come with them, and then they can go back to Greyskull Keep for dinner, since they need to drag the prisoner carriage driver back there anyway. Vex says that they will fight anyone who comes after Lilith, and adds, more ironically, that the group is very strong and very full of health after the battle with the Briarwoods. A voice rings out into the courtyard at that moment, ordering them to stop their business, and they turn to find Uriel in his robes on the steps behind them. He asks them about the scuffle with his guests, and Vex tells him that his guests were vampires. "Look at my brother right now," she says, and Keyleth adds that Tiberius is, but she trails off and looks around trying to find him. Scanlan finishes her sentence with "an idiot," and Keyleth says that Tiberius is an idiot and that they've lost him. Vax calls out Tiberius's name, and they find him on the steps being cradled by Alora. Vex urges Uriel to look at Vax's neck again, and he says, "I'm certain there's some sort of explanation for this." He says that the Briarwoods are esteemed guests and friends, and that this investigation will be taken very seriously. Vax says that Uriel can have whatever mages he wants cast truth on Vax to show that he was bitten and the threat is real. Percy speaks up and says that the Briarwoods murdered the DeRollo family and took Whitestone, and he has proof because he was there. Uriel says that they must have a conversation then, but for the time being, they should take care of Vax. Tomorrow, they should find their way back to the palace to speak with him. He says that this news disturbs him. Percy says that he recommends that Uriel disinvites the Briarwood from the palace, and Vax follows up saying, "We have earned your trust, have we not?" Uriel says that they have, but so have the Briarwoods. Lilith cuts in with her servant voice and apologizes for interrupting, but says that she was there for the battle and she saw fangs and dreadful white skin and blood everywhere and heaving bosoms. She says it was awful and rolls an 18 on her persuasion check. Uriel tells her to calm herself, and she lays it on thick, whimpering and gasping. He offers to take her to the medic, and they say that they will take care of her for now. Lilith complains that she's getting the vapors, and Uriel tells them to take care of her. He says that they will talk tomorrow and tells them to bring the proof that they have on the Briarwoods. He says that it's a very, very serious thing that they're discussing. Keyleth turns into a horse and picks up Vex and Vax to take them to the Temple of Sarenrae. Alora leads Tiberius to the rest of the group and asks them to take him to the cleric as well. Scanlan says that he seems totally normal to him, and Tiberius licks him on the side of the face. He then licks Grog and Percy too. They all make their way to the temple and are greeted by 2 clerics at the gates. Vex recognizes the elderly cleric who performed the resurrection ritual on Pike not just a year prior, which happened pre-stream. And she hops off Keyleth to approach him. She brings Vax to him, who immediately falls to the ground, and she asks the cleric to help them once again. Tiberius also approaches the cleric and starts sniffing him. Keyleth explains that Tiberius is normally a very intelligent sorcerer and that he's also part of the problem. The cleric says that there is an arcane residue on Tiberius and they hope to cleanse him of it. He invites them all into the temple and instructs the other clerics to light the lanterns. He begins burning some incense and warns them that these services are intensive and costly. Vex immediately says that they will pay whatever they need, and Scanlan stops her, saying, "Shouldn't we haggle first?" And she firmly says no. Tiberius then licks the cleric, and Vex pleads with the cleric more as Scanlan asks how much it will be to help their friends. He tells them that for Tiberius, it will require a donation to the temple of 100 gold pieces. The cleric then places his hands on Tiberius's head and casts a spell to break the feeble mind. Tiberius immediately licks Scanlan again, and Scanlan says it's unnecessary. Keyleth asks if there are some unexpected side effects, and Tiberius says, "No, I just really wanted to do that." He then exclaims, "That was really inconvenient," then adds on, "Let's help Vax." Scanlan says, "Oh, you're with us again? Welcome back. How was it being dumb?" Tiberius says that he was actually quite frightened for most of the time and didn't know what was going on. Vax says that he didn't shit himself, so that's a winner. Tiberius replies, "You shit yourself, Vax," and then casts prestidigitation on his butt. Vax reacts to the weird feeling, and Vex brings him forward to the cleric, who asks what is wrong with this one. Vex says that he was bitten by something quite unholy. The cleric says that the good news is that if he's standing here, then most of the danger is gone, but there might be some residual of the infection. He inspects Vax's neck and presses some herbs into the wounds, which stings a bit. Keyleth rolls an investigation check to see that he is using glistfoil, an herb used to burn away infections and cleansing wounds. The cleric tells them that as long as it doesn't get infected, then he should be all right. The cleric asks about the wounds, and Vex confirms that they drank his blood. The cleric says that he knows that vampirism requires many tastes of blood and to be on the threshold of death and beyond to truly turn someone. Vax says that he can't bite anyone in the group and asks the cleric if he's sure. The cleric says that unless this is something unnatural beyond classic vampirism, then he should be fine. Vax says it felt pretty unnatural, and the rest of the group agrees that vampires are pretty unnatural. Keyleth then asks the cleric if he has any extra glistfoil or any seeds she can take with her so that she can keep up with Vax's daily disinfection. The cleric reaches into his pouch and hands her some as Tiberius asks the cleric to bless the water in his magic water bottle. He is told that there are rituals to do so, and if he wants to leave the water bottle with them, and Tiberius says he thought the cleric could just do a little prayer and get it done, but the cleric tells him that it doesn't work that way. He does say that should Tiberius require such a blessing, he could get it done in 2 days. Tiberius hands the water bottle to the cleric, and the cleric says that since this is already an enchanted item, it will be a bit of an experiment to combine it with the blessing, but they will give it a try for 25 gold donation. Tiberius gives them 50 and says that the other 25 is for his brain. The cleric asks if there's anything else he can help with, and Scanlan says no and thanks him for his assistance. He says if they owe him anything for fixing Vax. He asks if they owe him anything for fixing Vax, and the cleric says no, it was just a simple disinfection. Scanlan says that their dear friend Pike Trickfoot will be very grateful for his services, and a look of recognition crosses the cleric's face. Keyleth asks if he remembers her, and Vex tells him that she's in Vasselheim restoring another temple of Sarenrae at the moment. A deep smile crosses the cleric's face, and he says that he had not known that Sarenrae had reached as far as Vasselheim. He says that he's happy to hear that that she has continued, there's a word missing there, that she has continued to carry her faith to distant lands and has recovered well. Vex and Vax confirm that she is thriving, and Scanlan says one more thing before they go, that if he needs any items, go to Gilmore's Glorious Goods today. Tiberius scolds him and tells him that not to say it like that, and Vax says that while his pitch is a little ham-fisted, Gilmore's wares are high quality. Scanlan rolls a 25 on his persuasion check, and the cleric says yes, he thinks he has seen his shop around, and Vex and Keyleth say that Gilmore's even opening another shop in Westruun. The cleric says that he and the other clerics may need to go to the shop for themselves. And Keyleth says to them that Vox Machina sent them. God, I did not proofread this. Scanlan says that they'll get 10% off, and the rest of the group rushes to deny it. Vax says that if the cleric says that Vaxel Dan sent them specifically, they might get 15% off. The cleric says he appreciates it, but sleep calls to him and wishes them a good night. Vex returns the farewell, and Scanlan asks for the cleric's name for the next time they have a dead ally. The cleric tells them that his name is Tristan, and Scanlan thanks him, and Tiberius says he'll see him in 2 days. Oh, mighty brain fixer. They all step out into the cold night air, and Vax yells into the night that he's alive. Vex complains that hurt her ears, and Vax just repeats that he's alive. Keyleth says that was very stressful, and the rest of them agree. Keyleth asks what exactly happened as they walk back to Greyskull Keep. Vax says that he thought he would be able to get a peeky poo at the Briarwoods, what the Briarwoods actually were, who they were, but he fucked up. Scanlan says he was very brave, and Vax says to Grog that he may shave off his pubic region or draw a dick on his forehead if he wants. He says to Vex that he is very sorry and that he did not stay close by, and he says to Scanlan that they're good. He says to Tiberius that he is very smart and Vax is very stupid, and Tiberius is extremely handsome and Vax is very ugly. Tiberius says that he doesn't disagree with any of that, and Keyleth says that wouldn't have been true 30 minutes ago. Vax just says, I'm sorry to Keyleth, and to Percy he says, I'm especially sorry to you most of all. You weren't ready, we weren't ready. Scanlan says, we failed you, and Percy replies that they haven't failed. He says that it's not over yet, he's not done. Vex says they'll hunt them down, and Keyleth reminds them that the Briarwoods said his family is still there at Whitestone. Percy says that they're liars. His family's dead. Scanlan says that they will track them down, kill them, and seek revenge. Tiberius says then they'll loot their bodies. But Percy says he doesn't think that they will have to. Keyleth says the Briarwoods know where they are, and Percy says that he thinks they will find them instead. Scanlan asks how he knows that the Briarwoods will attack them. They have a larger group. It's just the two of them against Vox Machina. Grog adds that we know of. Tiberius says that just because they have a keep does not mean they are safe. Vex says they need to set alarms around their keep, and Scanlan says that they also need to protect their new friend, Lilith Fair. They ask if that's her real last name, and she says that her family name is Daturai. Lilith says they've had a rough evening, and Vex tells Vax that she hopes he has learned his lesson, that his actions were stupid and reckless. Vax says he knows, and Keyleth adds, we had a code word. Tiberius cuts in, yes, Jumanji, and they correct him, saying, no, it was Jenga. At that point, Vex wonders where Trinket is, and as she looks behind them, she sees him running toward them as they reach the outer wall of Amon. She gives him a big hug and tells him that they almost died, and he licks her. Vax also licks Trinket's nose, and he gets a lick in return. Percy turns to Vax and tells him, thank you for your risk. He says he was foolish, but he is grateful. Grog walks up to Vax and extends his hand, saying, I'm glad you didn't die. Vax says, I love you, Grog, and then asks if he would like to draw balls on his forehead, and Grog backhands him as hard as he can. Grog says, no one kills you but me. Vex says he kind of deserved that, and Scanlan asks Percy if now they will come up with a plan to stalk the Briarwoods and kill them. Percy says, they're going to find out in a minute, and Keyleth says, don't we have a prisoner? Scanlan reminds them that they also have a guest too. Keyleth says that they still haven't found out about the broker, who he is or what he is. Scanlan says Lilith is welcome to stay with them for a few days, and Tiberius asks, do you owe him some money? Lilith asks how guarded against scrying their keep is, and they start talking about whether that's possible when a voice calls out from behind them. It says, oh, don't worry, it's not going to help you. They turn around and see a gentleman standing there about 25 feet away wearing studded leather armor and a cloak with deep, dark red skin. 2 individuals flank him, a sickly-looking older woman and a humanoid with darker, scarred skin and a white mask, slowly approaching them. Tiberius raises his hand, demanding to know who they are. They've had a really bad day, he says. The red tiefling steps forward and says that he has no quarrel with any of the rest of them. He's been scouring the city for a fugitive for a number of weeks, and it just so happens that they have managed to smoke her out. Keyleth instantly cracks her staff on the ground and casts anti-life shell, and Tiberius casts stone skin on himself. And that's where they roll for initiative. The broker goes first, saying, "Sweet Lilith, you've been a very bad girl." He names 3 individuals who have paid quite a bit of sum to get her back, and it's Lilith's choice, the easy way or the hard way. Lilith quickly uses minor illusion to make her eyes glow and her teeth lengthen. She says, "I hope they paid you so much. Tell my sister that I hope her face festers." The broker says, "Well, the choice is made," and starts to cast a spell, which Tiberius counterspells successfully. The broker looks at Tiberius and says, "Oh, that isn't fair." And Tiberius responds, "I haven't gotten to do much today, and you won't either." The broker shifts to the side, and then Lilith uses her turn to cast Phantasmal Killer at him, who fails on his saving throw. Vex tells Trinket to roly-poly cannonball the broker, and the masked individual doing some damage and causing an opportunity from the broker on Trinket as he rolls on by. Vex also shoots an arrow at the broker successfully and upholds the hunter's mark that she had cast on Silas Briarwood previously. Tiberius throws a fireball at them using some sorcerer points to give them disadvantage on their saving throws and doing 46 damage to both of them. He also uses his bonus action to Misty Step next to Keyleth to get into her anti-life shell. The broker casts a hellish rebuke at him for a reaction, but Tiberius succeeds on his save, taking half damage and sucks the fire into himself. Scanlan casts Eye Bite on the old lady, successfully causing her to fall asleep on the ground, and gives Lilith a bardic inspiration. Grog runs to the old lady and takes one of his javelins of lightning and throws it in a straight line to hit both the lady and the broker. Afterwards, Grog looks at Tiberius and says, "I did magic," and they all clap. The masked figure runs up to Vax, but hits Keyleth's anti-life shell. Instead, he uses his spear to swing at Vax through the shell, but it's unsuccessful. Vax then daggers the broker, successful on all 3, including a poison dagger. Percy looks the broker in the eye and says, "What is wrong with you? There's nothing here for you. Run away before you die. There is no option." He then rolls a natural 20 on his first shot. His second shot misses, but his third hits. He also blows an action surge, successful on all 3, and getting the "how do you want to do this" for the broker. At the end, his gun misfires, but he keeps pulling the trigger and yells, "You fool, your soul is now forfeit. Die, die." He then looks at the other 2 individuals, starts pulling out bad news, and pulls on his mask. The broker falls to the ground, and the old woman starts to look very freaked out. She gets up, casts Misty Step as a bonus action to appear 30 feet away from them, then starts to cast a spell. Tiberius sends out another counterspell, stopping her. Then she turns and bolts. Keyleth's anti-life shell dissipates as she reacts to Percy's unusual outburst, and she doesn't use her turn because she is so surprised. Lilith starts an animate dead spell on the broker, which takes a minute casting time. Vex shoots the masked figure with an entangle arrow, grappling him, then shoots another arrow at the old lady successfully. She also commands Trinket to run after her. Scanlan casts Eye Bite at the old lady again, then gives Tiberius a bardic inspiration. Tiberius throws his glaive blade. He uses a certain term for it. I don't understand it, so I'm going to call it glaive blade because I don't know what else to call it. Glaive blade, he throws it in the air and uses telekinesis to huck it at the old lady, killing her off. For efficiency's sake, Matt says that they wear down the masked figure and he eventually stops fighting and accepts his fate. Grog asks Lilith, "Can I go play t-ball with his head?" Vax says, "No, let this one live." Grog says, "We're letting people live now?" But the masked figure lifts his head and says, "No, kill me, give me honor." Grog says, "Okay." Vax says, "Well, in that case," and Tiberius shoves his glaive blade into the guy's neck. Some of the group objects, telling them to wait, and Tiberius stops. Lilith says if honor is what he wants, then don't give it to him. Vex walks up and pulls his mask off, and Vax turns to Scanlan saying, this is your moment, shit on his face. Scanlan says, look, this isn't the type of thing I can do whenever. I need to be in the mood. I need some nice lighting. I need to be wined and dined a bit. Vax says, my sister's right, do it on his chest. At which point, Vex notices that the face behind the mask is humanoid, but melted as if from severe acid burn. He says, kill me, it's all I have. Vex says, sorry, darling, you live. He yells in her face, and Lilith's spell on the broker finally takes root, and his dead body rises and looks to her. The broker hobbles toward her, and she asks him, my sisters, they sent you. They are still hunting me? She also notices that the glowing mark that had appeared on her chest is now gone as well, realizing that his death broke whatever connection had been placed on her. She tells him to return to her sisters and let them see what good it will do to hunt them, to hunt her. Tiberius grabs him before he can leave and loots him, finding a +1 short sword, then lets him shamble off into the night. They loot the old lady too and find a basic wand, ring of protection, and 320 gold between her and the previously masked figure. Tiberius asks Lilith why they should let the figure live, and Lilith turns to the man and asks him if her sisters were the ones responsible for the scars on his face. He says that he's been like that his whole life, but her sisters gave him purpose. He follows them, and Lilith has hurt the mistresses. She says, that is true. I did something similar to Belanora's face, but they will not give you the purpose. You are better out of their shadow. Trust me, I know. You should find better purpose for yourself. Go be free. I doubt they will trouble you anymore. She rolls a 15 on her persuasion check, and he says, I will not. For what reason will I live? She says, you seem like a capable fighter. My cousin recently became a member of the Slayer's Take in Vasselheim. Perhaps you would care to find purpose in testing your skills there. Vex says, and if not there, you can always fight in the Crucible. Lilith says they look for nothing but strength and honor. He finally breaks from the entanglement and takes a step toward them. Keyleth says, your purpose in life is only what you make of it, and Scanlan adds, you can be anything. You can be president of the United States. The man says that he will walk and he will think, but saying perhaps he will drown. He starts walking away. Percy asks, Lilith, does this mean you are now free of those hunting you? She responds that she is very much afraid not. This is just but one of the attempts her sisters have made to find her. She has no intentions of returning home, though. Keyleth asks her about it. It sounds very exotic, she says, and Lilith says that it's called Palek Listerka, I think is how you pronounce it. It is the seat of her family, and they go back a very long way, but she would not recommend that they visit. It is not the most cheerful place. Vex says that she has heard of some terrible things about her uncle, Zara's father. Lilith says that their family has interesting attitudes toward affection. She says that she doesn't always make the best first impression, but her sisters always told her that what was inside was what really mattered, which they told her while they were removing her intestines for divination purposes. She says, so perhaps maybe not the usual meaning of the phrase. She says that Zara is the member of the family that she likes best, and Keyleth says that they all have those. Vax also says that all they care about is deeds, and she has proven herself to them. Lilith says that she pales in the presence of present company and has heard many wonderful things about them from Zara. She says that she is honored to not only have met them, but have had their aid in this matter. She is profoundly grateful and offers to return the favor in the future. She says she is not useful for much, but a little smoke and mirrors she can do. Tiberius asks how she keeps her horns so shiny and clean. Keyleth asks her if she would like to stay the night before she moves on. She accepts, and they head to Greyskull Keep. When they get there, Keyleth goes back to the garden and takes out the glissfoil that she had been given and revives it from its dried state and plants it in the ground. Vax also turns to Vex and says, I guess I'm eating shit today, but I'm going to make a promise not to stray from your side. Vex tells him to remember that promise, and Scanlan licks Tiberius. And that's where they end the episode. So what do we think of the second half?
The second half for me is a bit of a mixed bag.
Yeah,
it's coming off of such a strong first half, it's a little hard to get through, but it has some highlights to it. as well as some lowlights. Um, and we get, our one really iconic moment with your soul is forfeit.
There's so many like one-liners, like even the I
Mhm.
will not stray from your side bit too.
Yep.
Like those are
Yeah.
lasting one-liners.
Yeah, and the one that between the twins is one that's reoccurring. So we'll see it again later in a few different episodes. But your soul is forfeit, that's a one-time line that just never dies um, in the best way. Uh, and I think it's particularly intriguing given the context of the rest of that line, which is usually forgotten.
Yeah.
uh, that whole "what is wrong with you? Don't you see there's nothing here for you? Run away before you die. There is no option." Like, I don't think Percy's thinking about anybody but himself. He is very much talking about his own situation. He's still in his
Yeah.
dealing with the Briarwoods thing, and this just happens to be a thing in front of him that he can kill.
Yeah.
But this is about himself. This is totally and completely about his own state of mind and where he's at and what he's dealing with. And he's not good at showing this to his teammates at all. He never has been. He never will be. He's going to put on that facade of nobility again immediately after this and before this. And he's going to do everything he can to hide where he's really at. But in this moment, he just blurts it all out as is. And it makes that line so much more interesting. But all the fandom remembers is your soul is forfeit.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, they're all fucking panicking.
Oh, yeah.
Like, they were not prepared for the Briarwood fight by any means. And
no, they weren't.
They got their asses handed to them. Like, it's a miracle that none of them actually died.
Mm-hmm.
And I think they're all just regressing on really bad character behavior at this point. Like, Vax is really mopey and like just like murderish too in the second half of like, oh, lock me up, I'm dying, I'm gonna hurt you all, like emo to the max, right? And then No Mercy Percy, like, oh, like, first off, love it. Second off, honey, are you okay?
No, he's not. In the best way.
Yeah, when No Mercy Percy comes out, like, first off, I melt, but at the second time, I just really want to give him a hug.
Yeah. He needs some affection and he's not going to accept it, but he needs it.
Yeah. And like, one person that I actually found a lot of interesting stuff in this episode in terms of behavior is Scanlan. Because Scanlan doesn't actually, I mean, especially in the fight against the broker and the old lady and the masked man, like, he doesn't do any damage. He specifically does not do damaging spells. Like, all he does is put the old lady to sleep multiple times and give out bardic inspiration, essentially. And he's also the one who, at the beginning of this whole like interaction with the broker, like, Sam, out of character, said, wait, what if Kit's the bad guy?
Yeah.
And there's a lot that comes out of this particular fight too. Like, we've had two very interesting fights in this episode for two very different reasons. Like, the Briarwoods was definitely way beyond their capability. And then the broker were like way below their capability.
Yeah, it wasn't even full round.
Yeah. And so they come off in two very different lights coming out of these two fights. And we see more of that in the next episode. So I don't want to like spoil any of that, but it's very fascinating.
Yeah, I think it's also part of why the second fight is so murder hobo and brutal, is because that first one was so far beyond them that they went in the opposite direction for this one and felt the need to prove themselves and to have some level of success.
Yeah.
And normally this isn't a fight that I would expect them to be as brutal as they were. even like, this early in the campaign, they're more drawn to, we kill what needs to be killed, but we've seen it with Clarota especially. That's our big example. They don't kill unless they know they need to, except in weird circumstances like this fight where they're just in a bad place overall.
Yeah, they're just straight up panicking, and I think it's just
Mhm.
being directed toward this broker fight.
Yeah. And I think it's not helped by the fact that um one, it's directly after. But two, not helped by the fact that Percy is the one to kill their main bad guy in such a brutal way. They, as much as they don't have a solid leader in Vox Machina, they never really do. Um, at this point, they're following Percy's lead, in the Briarwood fight, and they still are. They're still in that mindset, and to see him go the direction he does colors what they do with the people who are left.
Yeah.
Um, and I think that that is particularly intriguing. It also puts them in a very uncomfortable space, which makes this fight a little harder to watch, a little harder to understand. But it's coming from very true character motivations. It's just not how we would normally see these characters interact, and it is uncomfortable to see.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a lot of cringe in this second half from most of the characters. Like, I feel like Grog's the only one acting normal right now.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think Grog came out of the Briarwood fight the least surprised and the most unscathed. So that plays true, honestly.
Yeah.
Um, One thing I like about how Vox Machina works, and we see this more in campaign one than we do in campaign two or campaign three, is that they really pay attention to how near death or true death actually impacts their characters. Like it affects them deeply. And we see that a lot with Vax. We mentioned his kind of change in demeanor. But also like he's taking time to talk to the other people around him and to be apologetic about it. And he really does seem like he's been affected by it. But just as much we see the effect on people like Vax or Vex, gosh, twins. Um Vax, who isn't haggling. Like that's right now she's too panicked to care.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, she
All
was
she
the one
cares
that
is,
was like, whatever amount of
gosh,
money it takes, like
right?
talk about unvex like character or behavior.
And it is admittedly for them a fairly nominal amount of money at this point.
Yeah. Yeah. I
It's
mean, they just picked up 30 grand from
right. It's
Draghammer.
nothing huge, and it's probably nothing she would have blinked at anyway.
Yeah.
But to see her like straight up just say whatever it takes before she's heard a number, she's shook
Yeah.
in a way that we haven't seen Vex be yet. She's always that calm, cool, collected person. So we're seeing all of them shaken by what happened to Vax. We're seeing them shaken by how Percy is acting in this moment. The whole group is a little bit in chaos right now,
Yeah.
which plays out in very strange ways. And to do that with a guest at the table, I think is super intriguing, but also makes it harder to parse, honestly.
And I think this is one of the times that we see Scanlan's dad mode come out.
I agree. Yes.
Because he realizes everyone is fucking panicking. Because I think he's the oldest in the group too, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
I think so.
So he also has a lot more life experience under his belt as Scanlan. And yes, he comes off with this facade of like carefree charmer and stuff like that. But under the surface, he's actually quite discerning and quite strategic and also cares a whole lot about these people.
Yeah.
And he's gone into dad mode. He's like, all right, let's just put the old lady asleep. Let's support with some bardic inspiration. Let's make sure we're taking care of our guest here. Like we have company, guys.
Right.
We have like a traumatic family fight while we have company.
Yeah, and I think part of that is just Sam coming through.
Yeah.
but it's also kind of key to Scanlan's character, and it's not something we've really seen a ton of up to this point.
Yeah.
He's very much been the comedic character, and that's why he stays for, most of this episode as well, but he isn't on par with what he would usually be.
Yeah.
He's dialed it back, and his focus is more support and is more buffing the people around him and trying to keep everybody up and moving and alive.
Yeah.
And trying to keep them from going completely overboard, which doesn't really work, but he tries.
He tried. It was a valiant effort for sure.
Yeah.
And just we're seeing all of these sides of the characters that they don't let out a lot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're seeing the people they become under pressure when pressure is new.
Yeah.
They haven't really had a fight that they were worried about since we've been with them. I know they had a couple pre-stream, but they've had it pretty easy for the first,
Yeah. I mean, like I'm thinking back to the Rakshasa fight because that shook Vax as well.
It did, but in a different way.
Yeah.
That shook him because it was a threat to his sister's life, not because they were struggling. It was still a fight that it was well within their wheelhouse to win.
Yeah.
It didn't feel like they were that on edge.
Well, I think it made a difference that his sister wasn't there for that fight too.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Like, because I think he was more, I think he would have been more worried if she had been there for the fight.
I agree. I also think that with that particular fight, they were fighting with people who were unfamiliar to them. So he didn't have the people behind him that he could trust, and I think that heightened the situation and the threat to his sister. But this fight, it feels different in terms of where the characters are at, where they're coming from.
Yeah.
And I think his response to this one almost makes more sense to me than his response to the Rakshasa fight.
Yeah, yeah, totally.
As understandable as that response is, this makes sense.
Yeah. Like, I'm wondering if Vax's response to the Rakshasa fight was just exacerbated by the fact that they were separated. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think that that's mainly what he was reacting to in that moment, more so than the risk of the Rakshasa fight. I think it was just where he was funneling his anger,
Yeah. I think it's interesting to look at that fight in hindsight. I think we'll get some better insights into it a little bit later in the campaign, with some of the other stuff that happens and some of the backstory that comes out. But it's interesting to look at the dichotomy between these two fights. And I think with the one that's in this episode, we see his confidence shaken, whereas with the Rakshasa fight, we see his trust and his security shaken.
Yeah.
And they're very similar in a lot of ways, those two different pieces that kind of come under fire. But having his confidence shaken, I think, affects him in a longer lasting way than having his security shaken, because as soon as his sister's back with him, he's pretty much okay in the first fight. This one lasts a little longer. This affects him for a while.
And I think it also makes a difference that like he had a team with Rakshasa versus being alone against the Briarwoods in the beginning of
right. And with the Briarwoods, he had a team as backup.
Yeah.
But he was, alone for a lot of that fight, which he's got to be terrified.
Know if they would arrive in time.
Right. And now with his understanding of vampirism, because they haven't seen a whole lot of it, he thinks he is a direct threat to the people around him. So even once the fight is over, he doesn't trust himself. He doesn't trust his ability to have self-control in this moment. He doesn't really know what's happening to him. And I think that terrifies him more than just about anything other than a direct threat to his sister would. Because he considers it a direct threat to his sister. in a lot of ways.
That's so interesting. Because like I don't know if I would ever say that there would be something that he'd be worried about more than direct threats to his sister. You know what I mean? But I think you're right
I
in
think
the sense of it's
I
a
think him being the direct threat
yeah,
scares him more.
yeah,
Um, and to me, they're slightly different things. Like somebody directly saying they're threatening his sister is one thing. Him potentially being the one to hurt her is 10 million times worse for Max.
yeah, yeah. Because he's had practice defending her.
Mm-hmm.
He knows the steps for that, right?
Right.
But it's completely out of his knowledge set and experience set to have him be the threat.
Exactly. Yeah. So it puts him in an interesting position, and like given, classical vampirism, I see where he's coming from. Like that's what I would have expected. One bite is all it takes. It's a little bit different in this situation,
Yeah,
which I'm glad they got explained to them, but I can see where the panic and the scared twin vibes are coming from,
yeah,
because he doesn't have that context to start with either.
yeah, yeah. They're all just panicking.
There's so much panic in this episode, and it just keeps going.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
much.
yeah. There's so
Yeah.
much. I mean, are there any personal experiences that come to mind for us with this stuff?
Um, I think the thing that, and this might be a weird one, the thing that came to mind is, when your life feels like it's falling apart, there's always somebody who's doing something mundane in the middle of it and dealing with their own life.
Hmm.
And so feeling, feeling like you're the main character and then realizing, oh wait, other people still have crap going on, uh, was a very relatable phenomenon. And it's just an intriguing way to look at this little interlude to somebody else's problems. Like we've got this huge
Yeah,
connection to the Briarwood, and then we've got this, pocket fight that is very different and very much not related to Percy in any way, really, or to the storyline that we just started following. But it doesn't make it less important. It just means that it's a different focus, and it feels a little jarring to all of a sudden have that twist of different main character, different focus, different, but it's so true to life. Um, and so I don't have any like specific personal experiences, but that's definitely a feeling that I relate to, of like my life is haywire, but all of a sudden I got to deal with something else. I got to, my brother is dealing with something, or my friend is dealing with something, and I have to refocus, and it's not about me right now.
yeah,
And I feel like that is something that people are familiar with across the board, but it's interesting to see in a D&D game.
yeah, yeah. And I think for me, I'm thinking about tolerance thresholds, because
Mm-hmm.
that's what we're seeing in this episode is like we're
Yeah.
surpassing everyone's tolerance threshold except for Grok.
Yeah. And Grog's just Grog.
Yeah. And I actually had a moment today where like the line was like just flirting with my threshold tolerance. Like while like I have a bunch of repairs going on in my apartment right now, and like while I was waiting for the repair guy to show up this morning and like trying to like finish as much important work as possible before he got here, because I didn't like want my attention split for like the important stuff that I needed to do. And so I'm like, all right, I need to get this stuff done. I need to get this stuff on, while also like keeping my eye on the door and like all of this stuff. And there was this fucking black fly in my apartment that kept buzzing right by my head. And like while I'm like in this like I don't know, like mode, and I was like, I kept talking to the fly. I was like, I am literally going to rip you out of the air right now and like murder you if you come any closer to me, because it just kept making noise. And I was like, oh my god, I am like overreacting to this fly, but like my threshold tolerance was just being flirted with, and I was like,
Mm-hmm.
I'm just going to go on a murdering rampage.
And the more stressed you are, the closer that, like, the smaller that threshold is, and the
Yeah,
less it takes to push you over it.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, the size of a fly. That's how
Uh-huh.
small it was this morning. Yeah,
Yeah.
Like, and I can totally understand like that feeling coming from like Percy's perspective too. Like if I had done it, I would have totally shot that fly. Like honestly.
Yeah, it's one more thing that's right in front of him to deal with his issues because he has a lot of them right
It's
now.
like, this is annoying. I need to just like you not be here right now. So I'm going to just murder you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
He
Like
was
how
also
relatable
relatable.
is that? But yeah, that's where I get the relatability from in this episode of just being like, all right, everything's going to shit. I need to go like deal with everything, but there's things getting in my way of dealing with everything. And I just need to like knock those things out of the sky before I can move on. But
Yeah. One less thing to deal with is a lot more important when you're that stressed.
yeah, right. You're just like, all right, what is like the lowest hanging fruit that I can get rid of right now so that I can just like inch out just a little bit more space for myself, because that little bit of space is going to make a world of difference for me at this moment.
Yeah. Ugh.
Well, what are we going to do about it?
I think the thing that came to mind for me was mostly just taking time to walk away when needed, to not be the person in who puts myself over the edge. Like if there is any room to be the person who walks away, be the person who walks away.
Yeah.
Um and try to find that little bit of leeway in less destructive ways. Let's
Yeah.
not be no mercy Percy.
Yeah, I mean, I was just like, be the Scanlan, like that's what just popped in my head is like, you just got to be
Yeah.
like, all right, guys, let's just go to sleep. Let's take part of inspiration, and
Yeah.
do a little dance. It'll all be cool.
Same kind of vibes. Like be the least reactive person in the room and just let things simmer out for a little bit. Everything
Yeah,
will be better in the morning.
yeah. Let's just get home. We'll deal with this tomorrow. Everyone's upset, and it's okay. We didn't
Yeah.
die.
Yeah. Yeah. So give myself space, but give others the opportunity to walk away. Be the calming influence wherever possible. Yeah. All the same vibes. Be Scanlan.
Yeah,
It's a good way to put it.
yeah. In some scenarios, for sure.
Well, in this exact episode, be
Yeah,
Scanlan.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, I mean, he was pretty clutch throughout this entire episode, to be honest. Like, I feel
Yeah.
like Scanlan is such an undervalued player. I mean,
I mean,
Barnes in general.
yeah, you can do amazing things with bards, and Sam plays a bard incredibly well. But I think he's also good at hiding how strategic he is with it behind all the jokes and the funny parodies and, the big mug, which showed up this episode.
Yeah, yeah, I forgot to
Yeah.
mention that. Yeah, yeah, I put it in my notes somewhere. I was like, big mug. And I was actually wrong. I thought he bought it for himself, but it was gifted to him.
Yeah, it just started a whole thing.
Yeah, I mean, it's still going to this day with that gag.
Yeah.
And it just keeps evolving, and I am so pleased with its evolution.
It's been entertaining to say the least.
I mean, also, if we're talking about inspirational characters in this episode too, I feel like Lilith is also like inspo right there.
Yes.
Like,
Yeah.
the way that she stands up for herself and the way that she's like, yes, let them eat shit.
Yeah. I genuinely love her as a character. I wish we saw more of her than we do. Uh, because even just the little glimpses of backstory that we get from her are so intriguing. But I just love a good character that is fighting back and is happy to do it with or without the people around them.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, she's got so much strength in her and just presence in the being perfectly okay with who she is and perfectly happy to take care of herself.
Yeah. I mean, it's the fuck you watch me energy, right?
Yeah, I love that for her.
Yeah. I mean, I would love that for me too, please. Thanks.
Wouldn't that be nice?
Yeah.
If only.
Yeah, right. I mean, most of the time, yes. Not when I'm close to my tolerance.
Fair enough. Time and a place for everything.
Yeah, yeah. I'm like, I can be fuck you, watch me tomorrow. Tonight, I'm just going to whine about all of the broken things in my apartment.
Uh, Also relatable.
What would Lilith do? I guess is the WWLD.
Move. She'd move.
Yeah, yeah. All right. Well, anything we want to add before we wrap up for today?
I don't think so. I think I'm
Yeah,
good.
I mean, there's so much that happens in these episodes, and these episodes impact the campaign every step along the way. Like, we are going to be referencing these episodes for the rest of the campaign. Like, this was the beginning of so much for them.
Yeah. Yeah, I would argue it goes beyond this campaign. This shapes
Oh, yeah.
so much of the world that Critical Role takes place in.
Yeah.
That these are fundamental to Exandria, not just to Vox Machina, but we're gonna see these echo for years.
I mean, even in the Critical Role cast, like even outside of canon, I think it affects them in ways beyond that we even know.
Oh, for sure. I think this is the start of something huge for them, in so many ways, and we're never gonna leave this behind. This keeps going for everything that comes after.
Briarwoods.
I love them.
Yay. Yay. All right. Well, this is powerful stuff that we're talking about. An audience, we definitely encourage you to share your own insights and stories and feelings with us as well. Give us your takeaways, give us your stories. We'd love to hear them. Special thanks to Atlas for joining me on this episode. It's been a pleasure.
Always happy to be here.
So next time we'll be discussing Campaign 1, Episode 26, Part 1, and joining me will be Petal, so I'm super excited for that. And as always, I'm always looking for more co-hosts and guests, so if you're interested in coming on the series, just hit me up. I'll send you the link. In the meantime, please comment, like, subscribe below, follow us on Tumblr at Sacred Reading CR. And until next time, may all beings be peaceful, may all beings be free, and be the chaotic good you wish to see in the world. Take care, guys.
Bye.